Action!
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Grudge Report, during which we're going to talk about the hit sci-fi show based on the books. The show is called The Expanse. Particularly today we're going to talk about Season 4, Episode 5, called The Oppressor. My name is Margaret Reeb, and I am a member of the SETI Institute, and I'm joined, as always, by Franck Marchis, who is a senior astronomer at the SETI Institute and also chief science officer at Unistellar. Hi, Franck. How are you today?
Very good, Margaret. Nice introduction today. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I didn't stutter or mess anything up, I guess, this time, but there's always next time. Well, there's some interesting stuff going on Ilus and on Earth. We don't see any of Mars or the belt other than the belters on Ilus today. So maybe before we dive into most of the science chit chat on Ilus, which is really where most of the science happens today, we can touch base with Earth and the elections that are going on there. Avasarala. How are you thinking that she's doing during her campaign?
I think she's remarkably patient. She's the pinnacle of patience and positivity. This is gonna be an amazing campaign, obviously.
Yes, her trademark brashness is not going over super well with people. And Franck and I have both seen the season before, though some of the details are sketchy, but I remember this scene very well when Nancy, her opponent, stands up and turns what Avasarala thinks is a big dig about how Nancy kind of gamed the system. Nancy's able to turn that around and prove how terrible the system that's in place is, and how unemployment is a real problem on Earth, and how these new worlds look pretty great to a lot of people who have been in a heavily competitive environment. So I thought that was beautiful. And it looks like there is an inbound attack on Earth, attacking one of their Sentinel defense machines system, right? And what happens with that? What does Avasarala decide to do, Franck?
Well, she decides to destroy the spaceship, which is coming close to the Sentinel, called the Sojourner.
Yes, they think it's the Sojourner.
It seems to be a colonist ship, in fact, and that's the way they present themselves.
Yeah, they present themselves as a colonist ship, but then it turns out, or at least Avasarala believes, that it's the Belters launching an attack. Poorly timed for her campaign. Also, I don't know if we've seen the end of this yet. It seems like there hasn't been a resolution yet, so we'll see. But that's really all of the big things that happen, other than what's going on this exoplanet out through the rain gate. So let's go there. What do you think is the first science topic we should cover, Franck?
There was a scene in this episode where they basically ask the Rocinante to share data. The RCE spaceship asked to share data. And I forgot who is in the spaceship at the moment, in the Rocinante, but they're kind of not very reluctant to do it. And this reminded me kind of the scientific world, because it's a bit like that sometimes. If you remember the RC spaceship, I forgot the name of it, but went into behind the planet, and for time to time, so they wanted to have a full coverage because stuff are happening on the planet at the moment. I mean, we have this kind of weird island getting warmer and warmer. So they asked the Rocinante if they can share the data while they were in the other side, basically, so they can have a full coverage of the activity of this part of
It's the Edward Israel, right? Is that the ship that you're talking about?
Say it again?
Edward Israel?
Yes, that's this one, yes. So this reminded me of the scientific world, because we do that a lot. But then I also suddenly realized that I don't know what is the RCE. So I did some research, because it's not really explained in the show.
What did you find?
So I found out that RCE, first of all, means Royal Charter Energy. And it's an Earth corporation with offices on Luna and Ganymede. Okay? So it's a private company. It's a private company which has been hired by the United Nations on Earth to help exploring those new worlds. So it's basically a scientific kind of focus company which does space exploration for a state, or in this case for a planet.
So they're contractors, private contractors.
So if you look now the space exploration is done by space agencies, which are federal agencies mostly, right? NASA,
right?
CSA, the Canadian Space Agency, the Chinese
ESA.
Space Agency. They are basically receiving funding from the government, or sometimes from a group of governments like ESA, the European Space Agency, and then they define their kind of scientific role or scientific priorities based on the community input and sometimes from the government input, and they build spacecraft to explore Titan, to go to Jupiter again, etc., or to go to the moon. But something is happening right now in our world. If you look carefully, you notice that NASA is not anymore the top of space exploration. There is new companies, private companies. SpaceX is the most famous one, but you have Blue Origin, and you have a lot of other new space industry or new space corporations. This is basically the privatization of space exploration. It's happening at the moment, and we're basically living it, which is kind of interesting because when I was reading science fiction books in the 90s, we were talking about that. We're talking about private companies taking over space exploration, and it seemed to be far away, but now it's really happening. And in fact, those private companies, some of them will also do space exploration, like more scientific space exploration. So I have a few examples. It's going to happen very soon. It's going to happen in 2021, so this year. There is two commercial, that's the way journalists call them, space mission. One of them is going to be launched by Astrobotics. It's called the Peregrine Mission 1 lander. And it's
the moon, right?
Yeah, it's supposed to land on the moon in July 2021. And on board, there is some rovers from the UK. When I say from the UK, is from a private company in the UK called SpaceBit. And there is another mission that's going to be launched by a SpaceX rocket called by a company called Intuitive Machine, and it's called Lunar Mission 1 and Nova Sea Lander. And this will also land on the moon and will also carry scientific experiment to explore this area, which is called the Oceanus Procellarum. So what I meant by this is that, with this example, is that private companies are now doing space exploration. And some people like them, some people dislike them. And I'm kind of curious to know your point of view on this, Margaret.
Oh, that's interesting. I think that commercial companies, private companies can move a lot quicker than government agencies. And I believe that NASA's budget and other government agencies' budgets for space exploration should be much higher. But, they're not going to move as fast as commercial companies. Where I get a little nervous is when it comes to planetary protection, because I get nervous that commercial and private companies maybe won't be as careful about preserving environments or resources that deserve to be studied, because their bottom line is to make money. That's what private companies do, and that's not necessarily the bottom line of government agencies. So my heart will always lie with research and preservation of environments until we can fully understand them. And that's especially true of places like Mars, where we think there could have been or currently have life. So I think that's a discovery that's worth holding off on mining whatever might be under the surface of Mars. But that's my personal opinion. What do you think, Franck?
Well, you do know I have a private company, right?
But you aren't planning on flying human DNA to the moon, are you?
Now, after many years being an astronomer and working with funding received by NASA and SF, and seeing how slow it can be, witnessing a lot of missions being canceled out of the blue because we changed president in the US, or mission being postponed or being delayed or costing 10 times more. I'm not going to give name, but I'm going to give one example. JWST is one of the examples I have in mind right now. I'm questioning space exploration from government only, because I believe that if you don't have an incentive from private companies, a competition basically, then of course the system is going to slow down. The exploration will be slower. I mean, I was born in the 70s, and I thought that in 2020 I will see flying cars, and we will be going to the moon on a regular basis. It's not happening. Well, because we have been relying on the incentive from federal agencies, and it's not fast enough in my mind. So I kind of like the duality. In fact, I like the fact that there is private companies interested, and there is federal agencies like NASA, ESA also doing exploration and putting the rules, because it makes a balance. It creates this balance. NASA will basically say, okay, those are the rules for planetary protection. Since we want to talk about that, it's a very good example. We, NASA, will respect the rule of planetary protection, and that's the way we are doing this. And they basically create an ecosystem to make sure that we do have a protection, we do take into account planetary protection. So this way, a private company, a small private company like, I don't know, Intuitive Machine, for instance, I'm giving an example here. If they want to go on Mars, if they want to address the problem of planetary protection, which is good publicity for them, by the way, they will go directly to where NASA talked to, and they will basically respect the rules of NASA, respect the procedure that NASA put in place. So it's good to have both. And but relying only on federal agency to explore the universe, which is a big universe. I mean, the solar system is gigantic, and we still have explored 0.01% of it. It doesn't work. We need to have private companies involved. I know it's not something that most scientists will say, so I'm probably gonna get a lot of comments on this this video by revealing that I truly believe that private companies is kind of the future of space exploration.
It's the future, whether we like it or not.
So instead of denying it, we should basically make sure that we kind of bend it in a way we like. And that's why having a strong NASA, having a strong ESA, CSA, Canadian Space Agency, is important, because they should be kind of the respected entities that bring the rules and the regulation as well. So I think you mentioned planetary protection, but there is another problem. Another problem is that when companies go to the moon, it's not only because they want to explore the moon, which is a dusty rock, right?
A beautiful dusty rock.
Still a dusty rock. It's because, of course, there is a financial incentive to do that.
Right.
Building a station maybe there, harvesting helium-3 to do a fusion reactor in the future. So all of these come in contradiction with the Space Treaty. In 1967, I think we signed a space treaty. A lot of countries signed a space treaty, saying that there is we don't have the ownership of any land outside Earth. Okay, so that's a problem. If we go to the moon and you start harvesting helium-3 on an area of the moon, do you own it? If not,
according to the treaty, no. So you're like a space pirate or something, right?
Yeah, but then imagine Intuitive Machine sends a a rover to do that, and then the competition, SpaceX does the same, or a Chinese company will do the same in the future. Then they have three of them together on the same area. What are the rules? What are the regulations? We don't know yet. And I think it's going to be very interesting. If you're a lawyer and you like space exploration, I recommend you start focusing on this. So, because I think there will be a need for a lot of new laws and regulation, and having lawyers that really understand space and the space treaties will be useful in the future.
I agree. Yeah, I certainly hope space doesn't become, some sort of new frontier for conflict between countries. As sort of like the way the moon race was this big. Would I put it? It was about reputation between the U.S. and Russia. I'm sure there's a much more eloquent term for what was going on, but it would be nice if everybody worked together. But that's my kumbaya, perhaps Pollyanna-ish view of space exploration. I think it's very pragmatic to realize that private companies are going to lead the way in some efforts, push us in new directions. And maybe one day we'll have some sort of scuffle between a private company and settlers on an exoplanet. Because I'm sure if things were to continue, I mean, part of the big contention on this exoplanet is who owns the lithium. Aren't they mining lithium?
I think it's helium-3.
Helium-3?
Yeah.
I could have sworn they were saying lithium, but that shows you how well my...
No. On Ilus, sorry. Yes, on Ilus is lithium. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. You were thinking the moon. You've got that beautiful dusty rock in your head.
Stuck with the moon.
Stuck on the moon. Yes, so it is very interesting. I think the Expanse as a whole does a really good job of playing out some of these tensions between different groups that we see already manifesting in our current time.
I discovered that by reading some article. The RCE spaceship, the Israel you mentioned, was supposed to arrive on New Terra before the Belters, and basically the Belter took a spacecraft and arrived there and settled without before them. So when they arrived, it was too late. They were already there. So that's the reason this conflict started, in fact. And this can happen, and this has happened in the past, that we start exploring an area, and then there is an official procedure to do the exploration. I don't know, it can be like an armada of ships sent from the Queen of England to explore this area of the world, and they arrive there, and what do they see? The Frenchies. They're already there. They've been there for like 10 years. It happened in the past. And this is exactly
and I'm sure they all got along really well.
We have a ton of examples in human history showing that this did not end up very well.
No, it's not handled really well. And there's another interesting element to what's happening in the Expanse, which we have kind of heard about, but then we see play out some of the details in the first opening scenes of this episode, where the Belters, who you say got there early, they realize that this private company is coming because it looks like some of their supplies have already dropped on the planet. They're going to blow up their supplies or their their shelter. So that way the private company has to worry about fixing all of the damage and recouping their supplies before they can start mining or exploring or stealing whatever resources from the Belters, and the Belters will have a leg up. And that did not go as planned because there were human casualties, because the Belters arrived early. Because in space, I'm guessing there are no hardcore arrival times because everything depends on orbits and speeds and your Epstein drive.
They arrived 10 hours too early.
10 hours too early.
In this episode, in fact, they revealed this. Yes, the reason for which the RC spaceship which was supposed to land basically blew up. That's in this episode we finally found the true story of what happened on Ilus. Yeah.
Yes. And one of the main players in that is Lucia, I believe, and she has a time this episode. Her husband finds out the role that she had in the explosion, even though she was one of the people that didn't want anyone to get hurt. Her husband was not pleased, and their daughter has gone missing. So it looks like her injury reopens when she's in orbit on the Rocinante in low gravity, and she nearly dies.
Yes, she has deep tissue damage, they say, and those are difficult to fix under low gravity. And the Rocinante doesn't have how you say that, a gravity simulator. I forgot.
No, there's no place you can go on the ship to feel like you're in gravity, right?
Yeah. So this is an interesting scene, and that's a second scientific topic I have, because that's we see a surgery in zero gravity, and we see the effect of, it's not zero gravity, it's low gravity. Sorry, we see the effect of low gravity on the body when you have an hemorrhage, which is what she has. Mm-hmm. And we see the scene how they start to fix it or try to fix it. It's a painful surgery. I'm surprised that in the future, in 300 years, we still have those painful surgery. But hey.
Yeah, and she's tough as nails because she is telling Alex what to do while he's poking around in her deep tissue trying to stop the bleeding. So we must have some really, I mean, she must be under some sort of pain drugs to be conscious. But yeah, and we've covered how low gravity or no gravity complicates bleeding, right? Sorry, go ahead.
I discovered some very interesting things by looking around, because I assume we have never done low gravity surgery, but that's not true.
Oh, really?
I discovered that in 1990s, in the 90s, NASA researcher did a surgery on a rabbit, on an animal. And in 2006, French doctors did also an operation on a human in a zero gravity plane. You know those airplanes that fly up and down? We call them vomit comet, because people flew up in it most of the time.
The vomit comet, yes.
So they provide 20 to 30 seconds of weightlessness, so like kind of zero gravity. So French doctors did a surgery, a relatively simple surgery. They remove a kyst on the arms of a man in a comet like this, to show that it was doable. And they realized quickly that it was extremely difficult, because even this one, which was a very simple operation, apparently had some difficulty. So NASA has been thinking about that once again, because we want to send humans on Mars, maybe in 2035 or something like that. That's one of the last data I found on the internet about the NASA program to send humans on Mars. And those humans will have to travel for 8 months. So it may be possible that one of these humans will need to have a surgery. Could be anything, appendicitis, could be whatever, you name it.
Yeah.
An injury, something. So they basically provided some kind of funding to study or to develop a system which will allow to do first to do research to find how to do this surgery, and to develop a system to do this. So the difficulty, just let's talk about why this is difficult. It's difficult because if you are in the low gravity, everything is floating, okay? So if you have an hemorrhage, for instance, then there is no way your blood is going to coagulate, so you're going to stop it. You're going to bleed to death. And then you're going to cover the entire spacecraft wall of blood.
With floating blood.
Which is not very pleasant. And even if you do a very simple surgery like draining some kyst or something like this, the same will happen. You will have basically this fluid escaping the human body. It's not pretty what I'm saying right now, and then floating around. Okay? And does can make an infection. People can die of infection because of that, this material. So the idea is to find a way to do this surgery into some kind of closed environment. So in 2012, researchers of the University of Louisville and Carnegie Mellon tested a new system in the vomit comet once again. So they call that, I'm reading a note here because it's aqueous immersion surgical system. So it's basically an airtight and watertight dome that you put on the top of the body where you want to do the surgery, and you fill it up with saline and some kind of saline liquid. And you do the surgery in this kind of environment. So you have a system that can allow you to do the surgery, but basically, and you can change the pressure of this dome, so you kind of compensate for the escape of body fluids and blood. And they tested this on one of these vomit comet, multiple occasions. So I don't know the detail because I didn't read the paper. I found that on reading the press release and this, but there is true research to do this kind of surgery. Because
was it successful, or do you know?
I don't remember if it was successful or not, but I know they successfully tested the instrument. I don't know if the surgery was successful, but they successfully tested the instrument that seemed to be working. Of course, that was the first time we were doing this surgery, complicated surgery in such an environment. So there is more tests to be done. This was published in 2012, so it's new, and there is probably more research done since then by those researchers.
But people are thinking about this, right? That's, and because it's a serious issue for human space travel, even to our neighbor Mars, or even probably on the moon, I would imagine.
Yeah, it will happen. And on the moon, you have 1/6 of the gravity, so you don't really know how the body's gonna behave. Even if you're on the surface of the moon, you may have a very different way of behaving during a surgery because of the low gravity over there. And that's going to be the same on asteroids, etc. So yeah, it's interesting because in the show, I don't know if you remember, she has on an abdomen, she has this kind of white patch, something, and I think it's kind of the same stuff that I just described. It's a system that surrounds basically the scar to make sure that the blood does not escape, and it's only when you poke it that there is more blood coming out of it. So there probably are this kind of weird bandage that help stopping hemorrhage.
With the pressure?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
But yeah, that's all for the science really for this episode. I mean, we can see a surgery in low gravity. I don't think I've seen a lot of show showing that.
No. I think there are two other little things. And one is, did you catch that woman with that terrible green eyeliner?
Yes, I was thinking about the makeup. I say, is she wearing green eyeliner, or it's truly a sickness or something is happening here?
I don't know, because the doctor.
Did you notice?
Well, because it's one of those things in shows where I feel like sometimes they focus so heavily on an interaction that should be just kind of like dismissive that it almost feels out of place. So this sort of like, oh, what's going on with your eye? And then they pan and this woman has like very pronounced green situation on her eyelid. I thought, oh, I wonder if that, there's something going on there. I don't know. And she said that it itches, and it certainly doesn't look like pink eye. Yeah. And that's the only eye issue that I know that causes itchiness. So
there is something I noticed. There is nothing green on the planet.
Really? I thought there was some like greenery, like a little, like some grass, but it's,
the only time yellow. I see something green is when the spacecraft flies over the planet. You can see some green stuff in the atmosphere.
Interesting.
Yeah. I didn't see green on the continent where they are located. I don't see trees. I don't see anything with
it's definitely gray and flat and brown, more than green. Yeah. Interesting. Well, we'll see if that pans out at all. And then what did you make of the final scene, Franck?
Oh, wait. I want to talk about the Pelican case.
Oh, yes. Okay, of course.
Because Amos is carrying it, and you know how much I like
you love Amos, and I will say that we aren't sponsored, but if anybody from Pelican is watching and you want to sponsor our show, or Franck, because he loves you guys, let us know. But Franck, what is this mysterious Pelican case you're talking about?
So scientists sometimes travel and carry stuff around, like telescopes. This one, for instance, I carry it around the world with me, everywhere, like different continents. This thing has seen a lot of continents and countries in the world. And I carry it into a Pelican case, which are these kind of plastic, very hard cases that you can You check check their luggage, and they're very sturdy and they're very easy to open and close. I mean, and they make this very characteristic noise, like crack, crack. You can hear them. When you're a scientist, you use them, you can hear the pelican case from far away. And if you look at any exploration, Pascal Lee, if you look at the movie of Pascal Lee, you see pelican case, the yellow in his movie. Mine are always black because I do astronomy, so I always want to make sure that I don't see them, so I trip on them when I do observations. But Pascal has always the yellow one. So those are cases that you carry in scientific instrument. They're they're the reliable thing that we have. And I noticed that Amos is carrying one small one, a tiny one. He could have carried, with all those muscle he has, I've been expecting him to carry a huge
multiple, yeah.
That's all they have on the show, probably. So that's funny that they have that scene, because scientists like me totally connect to that. And probably a lot of people will do as well. Photography will connect to this because they carry the material into pelican case. That's all. It's not very scientific, but I kind of wanted to.
I mean, I'm glad that their engineering and their materials have lasted well into the future and into other
it's unbelievable, right?
Systems. Yeah, they're very durable. So at Pelican, I don't even know if that's their handle, but just leaving that out there. Any other parting thoughts before we get to the last scene of this episode, Franck?
No, let's talk about the last scene, but there's not much to say, but yeah.
No, because it's a pretty big cliffhanger, but it looks like some sort of explosion happened on Ilus.
So It will be a volcanic eruption. So we have seen that on Earth, a volcano completely blowing up. Mont Saint Helene is one of them.
That's in my neck of the woods, yes.
Yeah, and this case is because basically the volcano built up pressure, the activity is building up, and the volcano is not open. So the structure, the rock kind of deforms slowly, and it reaches a point where the pressure is so high that the entire mountain blows up. And so that's what that's what I will say we are witnessing here. But of course, we're on Ilus, and a lot of weird stuff happened on Ilus. So
yes, and as the scientist, the private company scientist points out, Holden seems to be the connection between all of the weird stuff happening on Ilus, between the flying creatures and the digging machines or what have you, and maybe he managed to blow something up inadvertently.
We will see.
That's my theory. Holden is to blame. But yes, I think that's it for the science for this episode. There's always so many wonderful things to talk about. But Franck, anything else from you before we wrap up?
I'm good. Thank you.
Nope.
Thank you very much.
Good. Awesome. Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Grudge Report. We love talking about the Expanse, and we want to hear from you. So please comment below. And I would be remiss without letting you know that we are a product of the SETI Institute. And the SETI Institute is a nonprofit organization with a mission to understand the origin and nature of life in the universe. So the show is right up our alley. And if the SETI Institute and its mission is right up your alley, please click one of the buttons below this video where you can sign up for more information, look at our YouTube channel, or even donate if you are so inclined. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.